and welcome to Fiction Fans, a podcast where we read books and other words too. I'm Lily.
And I'm Sarah.
And before we jump into our conversation topic of the day, Sarah, what's something great that happened lately?
Something great that happened lately. I took a nap today. And honestly, that was pretty great.
Oh, am I going to actually get a soundboard and figure out how to put in like a crowd cheering? I might, just for that.
Please do. I am fully team nap. To be honest, I take a nap most work days, most days in general, actually. But I took a nap today and it was great. I appreciated it. I almost ignored my alarm and slept until the end of my workday, but I showed incredible self-restraint and I got up.
There you go. Indeed, incredible.
Thank you.
Well, I have some extremely good news.
What is your good news, Lily?
I have made some really great cabbage recipes this week. Look, I love cabbage in every form. I love sauerkraut. I love kimchi. I love coleslaw. I love cabbage steaks where you just cut them into rounds and then you I've cooked them over a camp. It's delicious. Anyway, cabbage. I found this recipe it was like skillet gratin cabbage. So you make like a cream sauce that you smother the cabbage in and then you bake it and then you broil it so that it gets like charred and it's delicious.
It also involved bacon, which I think is an important clarification.
I actually skipped that part.
You skipped the bacon.
I made pork tenderloin instead, which was very good.
Okay.
Not
fair.
Crunchy, that's true. But I did still include like almond slivers on it. So there was some crunch in there.
Well, I don't care about the almond slivers, but the bacon appealed to me.
I did buffalo marinated pork tenderloin so that it was actually a meal and not just a half a cabbage.
Excuse you, half a cabbage is a meal?
No. That's like 2 calories. Not a meal. Actually, with enough heavy cream.
And bacon.
And bacon. It was delicious. The problem is that broiling it afterwards or at the end of the process made that cream sauce just like char and stick to the pan like cement. So the recipe was pretty simple and delicious, but my God, those dishes, not worth it.
That's unfortunate.
So today I made cabbage nachos.
Okay. I'm normally a fan of cabbage, more or less. Cabbage nachos, you're going to have to work a little harder to convince me.
Okay, so you start with pretty thick wedges of cabbage that you bake 10 minutes on each side so that it gets fairly soft and then also a little bit charred. No cream sauce, which means no horrible sauce sticking to the pan and turning into gross cement. But then I used chorizo for the meat. And then I also made like a cheddar jalapeno cheese sauce just in a pan on the stove. So still cheese sauce involved. And then I took the wedges out and I smothered them in the cheese sauce and the chorizo and some salsa and some more jalapenos because fuck it, why not? And it was great.
But part of the appeal of nachos is the crunch of the tortilla chip.
Yes, that's true. This was a cheese-forward nacho meal.
It sounds interesting. I wouldn't dismiss it out of hand. I might look at it askance a little bit, but I would eat it.
It definitely evolved from, I do just want to pour cheese on this cabbage.
Don't we all?
Yes. And because I didn't bake the cabbage I just like olive oil and seasoning, right? Not a bunch of heavy cream or anything. Almost no cleanup from that part of it. So
that's nice.
Much improved.
Much improved. Incidentally, I should give you my recipe for quick pickled jalapenos.
Ooh, yes.
Because they are incredible. I do eat them just from the jar. The sugar from quick pickling them, counteracts the spice so they're not like melt your mouth hot. So good.
Oh, I just used raw jalapeno. Threw those suckers in the cheese sauce.
No, I'll send you this recipe because it's really, it takes about like 8 minutes.
Nice.
A little longer to let things pickle, but the bulk of it is really quick and it is very good.
I fucked around with quick pickling. Discovered that spicy ginger carrot sticks are like the best thing in the world.
What I really like to do is I will add carrots or like broccolini to my quick pickled jalapenos when I'm quick pickling them. And then you get carrots that have just a little bit of a kick to them.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
I do almost equal amounts carrot and ginger, and then some red pepper flakes.
That does sound good.
It's incredible. Welcome to our food podcast, where we eat cabbage and other things too.
And other jalapenos too.
Yes.
Moving on from food, though.
What are you drinking tonight? On to drinks.
On to drinks. I am just going with the good old standard of white wine.
Excellent. I am the red counterpart this evening.
It's a wine kind of night, I guess.
Is it every night?
I mean, kind of. I drink equal amounts of cider, but I think I drink less cider on the podcast because I'm usually drinking cider other nights of the week, and I like to change it up for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, not for podcast listeners.
Well, this isn't actually a food podcast. We lied. This is indeed a book podcast. I have not read anything except for our book that we will be actually discussing for the bulk of this episode. But Sarah, have you read anything good lately?
I have. So I've read the 4th Run with the Hunted novella. This is the last one that's out currently. I should say, in case you haven't listened to the previous episodes where I've talked about Run with the Hunted, it's a series of novellas by Jen Donahue. This one was not Dog Heist, but it did involve a fake marriage.
Ooh.
It was very good.
Not my favorite trope, but can be very fun.
This worked really, really well because the Run with the Hunted novellas, they are first person, so you would maybe have a little bit of an issue with that, but they switch narrators for each novella. It's like 3 women who are basically like an Ocean's 11, Ocean's 3 criminal gang, and each book details another one of their heists or jobs or whatever. And one of them is kind of like the society woman who likes clothing and can mimic high society and all of that. And so she has a fake marriage in this book that she takes as a job. He is a bull rider, ostrich rancher who approaches her at a party and asks if she would fake marry him. And I am clearly going to the wrong kind of parties because I have never been approached by a wealthy, good-looking ex-bull rider, ostrich farmer asking my hand in marriage.
I know, you only get the current bull riders, and everyone knows you don't want to get tangled up in that.
They do talk a little bit about that in this book. Anyway, it's a very fun series. I'm looking forward to book 5 whenever it comes out. They're really short. They're like 120 pages or so you can read them in, an hour and a half.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah.
They sound really fun. Everything you've said about them just...
I might suggest that we read one for the podcast next year because I've enjoyed them that much.
And you need to talk about the Dog Heist.
I do need to talk about the Dog Heist. The Dog Heist was great. The Dog Heist narrator, I like Bristol, who's the narrator for this one, the most out of all 3 of the narrators.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Dog Heist. How can you say no to a dog heist?
You can't.
You can't. It's true. Anyway, I'm not going to make this a Run with the Hunted podcast episode, even though I probably could go and talk about the series for quite some time. But this episode, we are here to talk about 10 Low by Stark Holborn, which is a kind of Mad Max-esque science fiction novel that I had a lot of fun with.
Oh, this book, Sarah.
It is like Run with the Hunted. It is first person, which I know you have trouble with.
I do. And that's actually not the only stylistic choice in this book that was extremely difficult for me. Basically all of the style choices in this book were just not for me, which sucks because I loved almost everything else about the book. But trying to get over some of the form things at the beginning,
which I do think it's worth saying that that's a personal problem.
Yeah, no, it is for the most part. Some of my gripes are more legitimate than others.
Are less based in personal preference.
Yes. are less biased than others. How's that? But overall, it made it very difficult to read a book that, I mean, all of the characters were incredible. So well developed and three-dimensional. The plot was fantastic. The adventures and because there's action, but there's also intrigue, and those are balanced very well. And the world was so fucking cool. There are these chance demons. Like, what? I should have loved this book. I mostly did. I just, the first 20 pages were rough.
You've got some hangups.
Yes.
I know.
Yes.
I will say, I really enjoyed this book. My one complaint is that I really wanted more of the background. Like you said, there's so much to this world, and Holborn has obviously put a lot of thought into the world building and some of the background conflict that's going on. And we get these little nuggets and glimpses, and I wanted more of it. I wanted to know more about what was going on and what was the deal with the demons or the ifs. Yeah.
I agree with you, except I don't feel like I wanted more information in this book. I didn't feel like I wished that this book had more world details in it. I think the amount of information that we got felt really balanced with the actual narrative that we were experiencing. But I want more after it. Like, I didn't want to stop.
That's fair. I did want a little bit more information about the ifs and the seekers in this book. But on the whole, you're right that I think we got the correct amount of information. And I want like a Wikipedia article.
Yeah. Yes.
that I can read as a follow-up.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe a sequel that deals with the seekers, but we won't talk about that.
We're gonna talk about how much we want the sequel in the spoiler section.
Yes. Okay, so I have problems with first person. We're not going to get into that. I think I have complained about it enough on this podcast. Just line in the sand. Generally not for me. The other stylistic choice that I had trouble with was the withholding of information at the beginning of the book. It felt arbitrary and designed just to make the reader go, but wait, what's that? I better keep reading to find out. And I didn't need that, right? I was already interested in the world. Just tell me what this weird thing is. Don't make me wait 50 pages. It's fine. Just tell me.
Do you have a specific example of that?
No, there were some world things. So the ifs were one of them. The book just starts italicizing them. And I was like, what the fuck? We eventually find out it's because it's a jinx if you think about them too hard. So like there was a reason for that. So I got over it. But there were some other things like dropping faction names without any context whatsoever that we eventually learn about. But you could have given me just like any information at all instead of just, here's this crazy, like the rookery. So many questions, right? Better keep reading. No, just tell me give me some idea.
See, I get where you're coming from, but I also disagree with you because I think that it makes more sense to talk about it when it has more plot relevance. So I don't need all of that to be front-loaded. Not
front-loaded, but just instead of throwing a proper name of a place in here with absolutely no idea, like, is that a town? Is that a planet? Like, what? There's a lot of that at the beginning.
That doesn't bother me though. I feel like that's a personal preference on your part that doesn't work, but it's not a universal like indicator of badness.
It was just frustrating.
Yeah. I can see if you don't like it, it would be frustrating. It didn't bother me, so I didn't find it frustrating.
See, I think that is less of a personal preference than the first person perspective is. But I do agree that's just a stylistic choice the book made.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's less of a personal preference than first person, but I think there is an element of personal preference to it.
Yeah, probably. It's just so some things did get explained. And I was like, well, why are you hiding this other stuff?
Yeah.
But like, what's the choice happening here? It's fine. I got there eventually. Once I did actually figure out what was going on, like I said, plot, excellent, super invested. Characters, every single one of them incredible. But I had to get there.
Yeah, I didn't have that hurdle to overcome. But
yeah,
as expected with a first-person book, I generally don't.
See, that's not the only thing. I mean, if that was the only thing, it would be one. Anyway, we're not going to get into it.
We have covered this ground in previous episodes.
So I think this book is a sort of funny example of something that happens sometimes, I think, where they get a very well-known author to do a blurb, and then the blurb is just like so very unhelpful. Fantastic, punchy SF action. That tells me nothing.
Okay, to be fair, the full blurb in the front cover,
that's on the cover of the
line
whole book.
On the cover of the whole book.
They just wanted to put Adrian Tchaikovsky's name on the cover of the book.
Probably.
Or they picked a bad section.
The full blurb continues on to say it's full of blood and grit and bitter pasts, which is a little more specific than just fantastic punchy SF action.
Yeah, that's so much more descriptive.
Yeah.
If I saw full of blood and grit and bitter pasts on the front cover of this book, I would go, whoa.
Yeah. So I think that's on Titan for...
Yeah. Punchy action. You just paid someone to say a word for you.
Well, they're probably not paid.
Okay, but you know what I mean. Like
they probably got a free copy of the book and that's it. But yes.
Oh, I bet there are some authors who get paid for blurbs.
I don't think so. My impression is that authors are generally not paid for blurbs.
I bet George R.R. Martin gets paid for blurbs because they just want his name on the book. Maybe not paid in money, maybe paid in like favors and wine or something.
I mean, okay, yes, I could see him being given a bottle of nice wine or something as a thank you by someone who asked him to do a blurb. I don't think that they are paid in money or really in favors. I think it's less transactional than that.
Maybe. Well, they should pick better sections then, because that's just so meaningless to me.
Yeah, it is a little bit unfortunate.
At least when you read the entire quote, I think he actually read the book.
Yes.
I've seen some blurbs. I mean, there's the movie joke, right? 2 thumbs way up.
Yes.
Like, that tells me nothing. That's what that blurb feels like. 2 thumbs way up.
Yeah. It is more descriptive if you read the entire thing.
I do love the gritty Western sci-fi setting. I don't know. Part of it is I spent a lot of time at Joshua Tree growing up. So the desert landscape just has a lot of...
It has a hold on you.
Impact for me. Yeah. Like a lot of time. And I feel like this book really does capture that desert ambiance more so than just like, it's really hot. You know?
This book gives you a sense of, I don't know, dryness.
Yes. But there's also, like, it's not just acres of blank sand. That's not what most deserts are actually like.
No.
You know, there's bugs and all sorts of little critters, and there's agave is a huge...
Yeah, there's life out there.
Yeah, it actually feels like a real desert and not just, yeah, okay, yes, you can find sand dunes, but...
There really aren't that many sand dunes in this book.
No, are there any?
I don't think so.
Yeah. There's a crater.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just so much more than that. And there's this feeling of like the open sky.
I mean, the setting is incredible, and the world building that Holborn has done is very good.
Yes. So one thing that I don't think I really absorbed before I had actually finished the book is that the person on the cover is presumably 10, the main character. And that is not at all how I pictured her while I was reading this.
I mean, I think the shaved head is roughly in line with my mental image, but you're right that the face on the cover is way more
glam.
Yeah, put together, not as bedraggled as I think Tenlo in the book. is for most of the book.
She spends the entire book beat up.
Yes.
And it's a big deal when she gets access to makeup for the first time, because it's like a luxury that she hasn't had for so long.
They don't have a lot of water to wash up.
Yeah. Anyway, so I have to admit, my brain kind of just slid off the cover until I actually like got to the end and closed the book and was like, hold on.
Something's not right here.
Anyway, that's not actually a big deal. It did make me stop though. I mentioned this before, how all of the characters in this book are extremely well developed. They're all so human.
They feel like real people.
Yeah, there aren't any bad guys. There's definitely antagonists, and there's definitely people who do bad stuff. But if we think of bad guy as like, you know, person who's a big meanie just for the sake of being mean and to create conflict.
Yeah, there are no cartoon villains.
No, every single character has extremely reasonable motivations, which I really loved. There's a point in the book, well, again, the entire book, 10 is on the run. There's a point where she is even more on the run. And we get sort of a glimpse at the people trying to capture her. And they're people. There's, you know, there's no one like, I'm out to get you because you called me a mean name once. And so I have for some reason, held on to that forever.
It felt like for most of the characters in this book, if Stark had written a book from their perspective, you would believe that they were the hero.
Yeah.
And that Tenla was the villain.
Just everyone, I really love that all of the conflict in this book was not unavoidable, but none of it felt fabricated for the sake of the novel, right?
Yeah.
There was no point where a character did something that I was like, oh, well, that's just to make the story
to create
progress.
Conflict.
Or
yeah,
exactly. And that is hard to pull off, especially when you have so many different sides. Like there's a lot of conflict, and not all of it is physical. There's also some, I'm going to use the word political, but we're talking about Old West gangs. But that's still politics.
I was going to say, I'm surprised that you want to use the word political, given how you normally react when I say there's politics involved.
I love interpersonal politics. I hate discussing things that are happening somewhere else.
And it's true that this is interpersonal politics for the most part.
And all of the people in these discussions, or all of the politics happening, are happening with the people who are actually affected by it and doing it and involved. Yeah. It's never but what do you think those people over there might think? Like none of that.
Small scale politics versus like larger countrywide politics.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that kind of thing, like when to use tact versus when to use brute force, like that kind of thing. I love it. That's great. But again, that's very personal. That's not like governmental.
Yeah.
I loved the gangs. There's the, does Falco have a name for her group? The gals, she calls them, her gals, but like.
I don't know if the group itself has a name beyond that.
But then there's also the rooks. Those felt like the two big pillars butting heads, but there also is a military presence on this planet. And there is sort of the like spooky desert dwelling raiders that, and I guess even saying there's these factions is oversimplifying it, because most people are just on their own side. So this is after a civil war type thing, a unification war. And so there are still remnants of which side of that were you on? Because I think it ended pretty recently.
It sounds like it ended pretty recently. And also, this was not a planet-wide thing. This was like a interstellar conflict.
Yes. And this is a backwater planet.
Yeah.
Or even just, it's at the very edge, right?
I think it's at the very edge of
known space.
Of the conflict, yeah.
And it's a moon. It's not even a planet.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 is on the run. She has found like the most out of the way place she could possibly hide.
Well, I think she got there kind of accidentally.
I couldn't tell. We can't talk about that.
Yeah,
at this moment.
You're right.
While there is governmental presence on this moon, it's
pretty minimal.
Very minimal, right? It's only nominally part of this unification thing. And when the government meddles, it tends to make stuff worse, which that's certainly never happened in the history of ever.
We're not going to get political here.
No.
But oh boy.
But I also like how both sides of that war are painted as, I mean, participating in war is bad and has bad consequences. And I don't think the book shies away from reminding the characters on both sides of that.
Well, I think it helps that we have, I can't say point of view characters because we only get it from Tenlo's point of view, but we have main characters from both sides of the war. We're never left with the sense that one side was overwhelmingly correct in their actions.
That's a great point. The whole plot of the fucking book is dealing with the fallout from the war.
Yeah.
Because 10 was on the, what did they call themselves? Not the freedom fighters.
The FL? I forget what that stood for though. Free something, I think.
Probably. And very early on in the book, she runs into the general, who was a cybernetically engineered child soldier, who fought for the government the unification powers.
I wouldn't say cybernetically engineered, but cybernetically enhanced, because she was a normal child until she got all of these enhancements.
Like her soldieriness was engineered.
Yeah, she's not a test tube baby.
No, she was an orphan. They were all orphans. All of the child soldiers. And the book, yes, does address how terrifying that is. But by virtue of having, I would say Tenlo is obviously the main character, but I'd say the general is the secondary.
Yeah.
Because we have these two characters forced to interact on opposite sides of the previous conflict and on opposite sides of the whole post-war guilt thing, right? 10 is very upset with what she did previously, whereas the general is introduced still being like a 100% true believer. I'm really glad that the government did this to me type thing. And so because we're able to see conversations between them, we get both sides of it on the page.
Yeah.
Which I think is it keeps it from feeling preachy or simplistic.
Yeah, exactly.
You should read this book if you don't hate first-person perspective. If you love Western sci-fi.
If you enjoyed Mad Max.
Yeah, there was another blurb that's like Mad Max meets Firefly. And I think that actually nails it pretty well.
Yeah.
I'm conveniently leaving off the Becky Chambers part because what?
I think that the Becky Chambers is a little bit more of a stretch, but Firefly meets Mad Max is pretty accurate. There's a very strong found family component. There's a very strong space Western component. The sense of place is incredible. Yeah. Also demons. So if you want some weird spiritual shit all mixed up in your pretty reasonable sci-fi, get in on this. Yeah. To avoid spoilers, skip to 4340. Yeah, we had to get to the spoilers because I was definitely going to accidentally spoil something talking about the general. I mean, to be fair, there's kind of a lot to spoil accidentally there.
I think I cut it off in time.
I don't think you spoiled anything.
She exists and she is really proud of being a child soldier. That's all. Her intro, basically. Yeah. Oh, but the stuff we find out about that whole thing is, I mean, obviously there was more going on there. But when we find out that, well, anyway. I mean, we are in this, you could just continue on with your sentence. Yeah, I was going to say when we find out that the government was lying, but I never actually introduced what they were lying about, so it didn't really make any sense. Yeah, one of the things that I both enjoyed and hated about this book was that we get this conflict where the government is trying to kill off all of the child soldiers because, quote unquote, they're dying anyway and their bodies are breaking down from everything that's happened to them. All of the augmentations, they didn't stick, right? They're degrading over time. Yeah. And I would have liked
I don't think that this story in particular, as it is told, needs it. But personally, I would have liked more about that conflict too, and like why they're making this decision and how they came to it and how that affects all of the other child soldiers who we learn have died, have either, well, have been killed, presumably, or have accepted being killed.
Well, we find out it's all fake. The government made it up.
Well, yes. I mean, we do learn at the very end that Gabby, who's the general, is not actually dying and she's fine. And we can kind of assume that the government is lying about that from the very start.
They say the child soldiers, when they grow up, they are able to be flipped and they're too strong of assets to work for the other side. So they're taking them out. That's what they say. And then 10 accuses them of just being embarrassed that they committed these atrocities. But I think it's pretty clear that them dying over time is bogus.
Yeah, no, we know that that's fake.
Yeah.
But I wanted more of that. I don't know. I wanted that conflict. I feel like that in and of itself could have been a book. And I wanted to read that book. Not specifically with Gabby, but like with all of the other generals.
I think the amount that I got here was sufficient to me. That's an example of a twist that I didn't see coming. Like, I completely bought into their explanation. And then when we did have that reveal, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. That actually makes more sense than their story.
Yeah, I assumed that they were lying from the beginning, but I did want to.
Interesting.
I did want to have, I don't know. I just, my assumption was that would be why they were lying would be more of a conflict than the ramifications of their trying to kill Gabby, if that makes sense.
Well, I think we're running into that 10 was the true main character. And so we're getting her dealing with the guilt of her actions in the war and also discovering what is going on with the ifs and how she's like a chosen agent of chaos, which is pretty damn cool. And like, this is more about the chaos than about the child soldiers.
Yeah, there was a lot going on in this world, not necessarily in the story, because the story is pretty well like contained, but there was a lot going on in this world. And I didn't have questions per se, but there was a lot of other stuff that I would have happily read a book about.
It feels like a different book entirely, though.
It would have been a different book entirely. I want the spin-off book.
Yeah, this book wraps up so well. I think if it kept going, it would be to this story's detriment.
I agree. I don't think that this story, as it's told, needs anything else.
Except now, we can say this now, the Seekers who worship the ifs, much to everyone else's horror, except maybe they're actually saving more lives than they're killing. Oh, so much going on there. And this book does end with 10 joining them. Like, it ends right there.
Yeah, which was the perfect ending. But also, now I need the sequel where 10 is part of the Seekers.
Yeah, it's not that this story left me needing anything, this story, but the world.
Yeah.
Be like, I'm not ready to go.
Yeah. I think that's where I fall on all of this too. Like, the story was perfect. I don't need anything else for the story. There's just so much else in this world that I want to learn about. Yeah.
We even had a train heist.
Which is almost as good as a dog heist.
Oh, it was so perfect for this book. Like, for this world.
It was.
Really, because the whole like Western sci-fi thing didn't feel like cartoony or forced at any point. And then we get to the train heist, and because the book was so sort of conservative with the Western motif, I mean, that's definitely what this book was, but it never felt over the top in any way. And so it earned its fucking train heist.
I did love getting a text from you this afternoon saying train heist. I was like, oh yeah, I know exactly where you are in this book.
Yeah, at the train heist. It's like the big climactic scene at the end too. Oh, it's very good. Oh yeah, and all of the vehicles are named after animals. So it's like the mare, or like the steed, or whatever.
The mule.
Yeah, the mule. All of the like vehicle types, I should say.
Yeah.
It's not like she named her ship the pony or something. Also, earlier, I asserted that there are no bad guys who are mean just for the sake of being mean. That's actually not true. There is, in one backwater town on this backwater moon, there is is he a sheriff? That's not quite it. He's like a insurance inspector or something. He's basically a sheriff.
Marshall,
thank you.
he has some kind of job that's adjacent to the government. I don't think he's technically a government. I don't want to say federation, but whoever, but the federation equivalent. He's not working directly for them, but he's kind of adjacent to them, and so he benefits from the privilege that all of that entails.
And he loses his mind. So, but that's the thing. He is mean just for the sake of being mean, but the book directly addresses that, yeah, he's losing it. He's coming unhinged and people can tell. So he's not just being mean for the sake of being mean. Like, there's actually something going on with him. And I appreciated that, because in so many books that are trying to be gritty, they're just like, yeah, and everyone's an asshole for no reason. And it's like, no, people aren't like that, though. People are assholes, but not for no reason.
Yeah.
But I had to address that there is one big meanie face.
There is one character like that.
Okay, there's one line that really bugged me that you didn't even notice. So maybe it's not worth bringing up.
It's true. I did not notice this whatsoever. I was also reading most of this book. Well, I finished this book on the way home from Neil Gaiman, so it was quite late and I was quite tired.
This is like basically at the halfway point. Anyway, Tenlo gets captured by not the rival gang, but she's friends with one of the gang leaders, and this is a gang she is not friends with. And she has a big ass bounty on her head for, war crimes and escaping prison and all of that stuff.
As one does.
As one does. As this guy is taking her in, he says, "In another world where we accepted women, I'd ask you to join his gang." And that just bothered me so much.
It bothered me so little that I did not notice it, as you said.
It's just, why is that detail there?
It's just him showing that he's an asshole.
See, I feel like there was the line, "In another world, I would have asked you to join," but then it needed to be justified why he couldn't ask her to join. And so it was made up on the spot that apparently this gang is only dudes. Because, like, why is that a thing? Why is that a thing? It doesn't come up at all.
I mean,
except for in that one moment.
But that means that it doesn't matter if it's a thing or not.
Then why even include that detail?
It doesn't contradict anything else. Why not?
It was just the line of dialogue is awkward, and so that stuck out to me.
I don't think the line of dialogue is that awkward.
It is. Where
It's
we
not.
accepted women. Just so you know, here are the rules for joining my gang. This is a thing I'm going to tell you now. Like, no.
It's not that bad.
No one talks like that.
That doesn't matter. This is a fantasy book, science fiction book.
It's not that fantasy.
It's a science fiction book.
No, it's not. It's not that fictiony. People still talk like people 99% of the time.
I mean, he still talked like a person.
I didn't like it.
Honestly, I didn't. It bothered me so little that I didn't notice it.
Why even make the gangs separated by gender? Like, I don't even...
Because he's an asshole.
It doesn't come up. Why? Like, why?
Because he's an asshole.
Not him, though, too, because Falco does it, too.
Well, you did say that you found an interview that said that Falco's gang was women and non-binary people.
Which was the impression I had gotten, that these are... And that's also why they feel like rival gangs, because one is all boys and one is girls plus NBs.
That was not the impression that I got from reading it.
Well,
but
I was right, though, so...
you were apparently right.
But, like, and it comes up so little that you didn't even notice, so why even include it at all? Like, I just don't understand. Was there a point being made? Because I clearly missed it.
I mean, it didn't matter, so why not?
There are some details you can say why not for.
This didn't bother me.
Arbitrarily gendered gangs. Like, I feel like it was going something. Maybe something got cut that made it make more sense.
That's possible too.
And it just felt very out of place. The rest of the book is just so not about that. Like, I don't know. It came completely out of left field. Oh, we got about the romance.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Silas at all.
I was not torn about Silas. Well, I mean, of course, as a character, stunning, incredible, makes mistakes, but you understand why. Completely reasonable human being who I absolutely believe exists. So he's also the love interest, which is kind of wild. There's a moment near the beginning where they first meet each other that Ten considers kissing him, but that's kind of just this is the first time she's felt safe in who knows how long, so she doesn't. And I was like, does that mean she's actually into him? Or is that just a one-off, she was caught up in the moment thing? I was not sure. But no, yeah, they do actually get together, and I don't mind it.
I mean, I feel like your skepticism there is what mine should be, given that you were usually much more of a romance person.
It's not. My skepticism was not with the romance. It was whether I believed Tenlo would allow herself to be vulnerable around this specific person. Because he betrays her pretty bad almost pretty early right away.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
I really think she would forgive him for that. But I mean, his reasoning is solid.
His reasoning makes sense. And I think that for all of Tenlo's issues, she is at her heart a very forgiving person. So it kind of makes sense that she would overlook that.
Maybe not overlook, but accept.
She wants to move on.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that she would move on from that too.
Well, so her whole thing is she's trying to save as many lives as she took due to her actions in the war, right? So she's all about forgiveness and atonement and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just nice. She is a very suspicious person because she's on the run. So that again makes complete and total sense. But God, what Stellis? That's not his name. Silas, thank you. So after they are reunited, he saves her out of the desert after he sells her out, and it's a whole thing. That's when there's a lot of demons. We can't be getting into that. We'll be here forever. I love the ifs. Just read the book. But he says right away, all I knew was that you were wanted for kidnapping. I thought you were going to get 3 months. He didn't know that she had escaped from a lifelong sentence and had $100,000 bounty on her head.
Which means that he got really shafted when he sold her out because he was only getting $200 for it.
Yeah. And she is very mad at him at the beginning. Again, completely everyone makes not good decisions, but really believable ones.
Yeah.
And that is so hard to pull off, again, especially with all of these different moving parts and different motivations. But I still truly believed every single person in this book. And that's really incredible, especially when you have a very suspicious person and someone who betrays her immediately end up getting together. How do you do that? That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Stark Holborn really does pull that off very well.
Like I said, I liked the romance, but the fact that it even worked is mind-boggling.
Yes.
Well, there was one sentence in this book that broke my brain.
What sentence was that, Lily?
The general went to the general store.
That's a lot of generals.
Yeah, I didn't know you could buy a general at a store. No, but seeing that word used for such different contexts, so close together.
It feels like when you say a word too often and it loses all meaning.
Yep.
I'm sure there's a phrase for that, but...
semantic satiation.
Yes. Haven't we had a podcast, Words Are Weird, about semantic satiation?
Yes.
Yes.
But anyway, general and general. What? I got curious and I looked it up. I'm not using LiveJournal as a source this time. I'm learning and growing as a person and researcher. I did not research this. I Googled it. But the word general is, of course, from the word general. That's not helpful at all, is it?
Not quite.
The military title comes from the phrase general, meaning sort of everything, not specific stuff. Apparently, it's a shortening of a French phrase, capitaine général. So I guess just the captain of everything, the generalish captain. And that got shortened to just general. But those are so different. One is a specific person, and one is not a specific, specifically not specific. I never thought of it before, but I was forced to.
It's very true.
That's it. That was my words are weird.
Yeah, I don't think I have any grand comments on it that we haven't already covered. I'm sorry, I'm not a good participant in this words are weird.
That's all right.
But it is a word that is weird.
Yeah, you can agree with me. That's very important.
Just this once, I am agreeing with you.
Can you imagine if you came in, though, and were like, that's not weird at all. That makes perfect sense.
I mean, I can, because I would be tempted to do that.
But at least in this case, you would be wrong.
I would be wrong.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Fiction Fans.
Come disagree with us. We're on Twitter and Instagram at FictionFansPod. You can also email us at fictionfanspod@gmail.com.
If you enjoyed the episode, please rate and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and follow us wherever your podcasts live.
Our Linktree also has a link to our Patreon, where you can support us and find our show notes and a lot of other nonsense.
That's it. It's show notes and nonsense.
It's a lot of nonsense and some show notes, but a lot of nonsense.
Well, thanks again for listening, and may your villains always be defeated. Bye.
Bye.